Sisters and brothers, we might hear these as three extremely challenging readings today. A prophet trying to avoid war and destruction, thrown into a cistern and left to die. A race in which the runners carry heavy loads of their own sins. And finally, families coming apart because of faith. We are reminded today that our belief in God, our love for Christ and His church, the transforming of the Spirit in each of us comes with risk. Risk of failure and rejection. And that is why we are here today, not to be mired in risk and rejection and words of failure, but to receive words of encouragement that we can indeed complete the race. The letter to the Hebrews, which we just heard, was written just a short 40 or 50 years after Christ's death and resurrection. It was written to Jewish Christians who were tempted to turn back, to give up the race, to give up the faith because it was too hard. In times of persecution or rejection or failure, they might have given up. This is a letter to the discouraged. So often we too can come to moments of discouragement when we realize that our faith, that living with the values of Christ, so costly in a world so full of sin, distrust, rancor, and anger, this letter is for us. In this letter, we read the wonderful explanation of faith as the assurance, the realization of what is hoped for, and evidence of things not seen. As a way of encouragement, just before this section we hear today, the letter to the Hebrews recounts in parts the stories of the heroes of faith from the Old Testament. We hear of Abel and Enoch, of Noah and Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Joshua, Rahab, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets. We are told all of these died in faith. They did not receive what had been promised, but saw it and greeted it from afar and acknowledged themselves to be strangers and aliens, nomads on earth. For those who speak thus show they are seeking a homeland. But now they desire a better homeland, a heavenly one, we are told. This is an image that should resonate with us. As we see the movements of peoples around the globe each day, every day our news is filled with the stories of people, real live individual men, women, and children who desire something more. People who are willing to leave home and homeland and face crushing obstacles, even the threat of death in search of a better home. The letter to the Hebrews, sisters and brothers, reminds us that we are all immigrants, wanderers, nomads, seeking the better, the best life possible for ourselves and those we love here and in eternal life. Of these Old Testament heroes of faith, the letter to the Hebrews goes on to tell us they all received acknowledgement through faith, but they did not receive what was promised since God had made provision for us to have something better, and they were not to reach perfection without us. Then the letter turns to us, to the Christians, using the image of a race. We're called to think of a grand stadium, Reliant Field, Energy, a giant stadium filled with cheering fans and former athletes who had run and completed the race, perhaps many times. There they are, the great saints: Peter, James, John, Mary Magdalene, Irenaeus, Cecilia, Lawrence, Agatha, Gregory, Francis and Clare of Assisi, Thomas Aquinas, Bonaventure, Francis de Sales, Jean-Jacques Chantal, Martin de Porres, Madeleine Sophie Barra, Philippine Duchesne, Elizabeth Ann Seton, Louise and Zélie Martin, Theresa of Lisieux, John Henry Newman, John the 23rd, Paul the 6th, John Paul II, Oscar Romero, Theresa of Calcutta, and more and more and more. There they are in the stadium as we run the race. The stadium is full of this great crowd of witnesses cheering us on, offering us encouragement. But the message of Hebrews is clear, sisters and brothers. Don't look to the stands. Don't look to the cheering crowd. Then we hear the powerful words, keeping your eyes fixed on Jesus, the leader and perfecter of faith. He who is God, what God has promised us, He is the homeland for which we long. He is the end of our race. When we arrive at Jesus, we are made perfect in faith. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the leader. Run as He runs. Live as He lives. See as He sees, and love as He loves. If we keep our eyes on Jesus, what do we see? We see one who is a healer, who loved mercy, who lived mercy in his relationships with others, one who saw the dignity of each person, man of wealth or leper excluded from society, blind beggars, and those crippled in mind and body. We see one who is not constrained by cultural values, opinions, political platforms, or judgments. He was not one who pursued power or the powerful. He constantly sought out the poor, the broken, the sinful, the marginalized, and the invisible. The invisible God made visible has come to make the invisible people visible. The invisible God made visible has come to make the invisible people visible. He sees you and me, not with eyes focused on religious rules or judgment, but with the eyes of love and mercy and healing, wishing for us that we might drop the weights of sin and self-judgment and run with all our will and our heart towards Him, our homeland. Jesus, who can see us, endows and enables us, you and I, with the gift of faith and the power of the Spirit to see in others their hopes and hurts and abandonment and rejection, all like us, longing for a homeland. Our society so often tells us that there are winners and losers in life, that people are either legal or illegal, that our lives are either orderly or raging, that we may be happy or bitter, that so often people have made their own ways to the margins, there where they are invisible. Jesus, sisters and brothers, sees people, sees persons, sees each person for the sake of joy. He is the one who made each person with the desire that they too live in His friendship and share in His glory. He is the goal for every human person. If Jesus sees us for the sake of joy, Jesus sees all of us burdened by sin that clings to us. And yet He wills that each of us, sisters and brothers, run the race to win the crown, to arrive at the homeland. We who are privileged to share His life and His Spirit are called to image and bear His likeness. We too must share His excitement for the races of every other person. We must seek to have the eyes of Jesus that we might see the invisible persons, that we might see the dignity of all, and that we might see Jesus calling all to this same race, to the homeland. Sisters and brothers, this will force a change in us as we run our race. We must see the addicted, the imprisoned, the homeless, the immigrant, the beggar, the trafficked, the infected, the elderly, the tattooed, the activist, and every other, not as a class or a group or any kind of shapeless mass. These are persons. Persons who, like us, are seen by Christ, loved by Christ, and who are called to share the homeland, the end of the race, with us. No, this, sisters and brothers, this is not a matter of politics. Politics is about how. This is about who. The who are those who Jesus looks upon with eyes of love and mercy and healing. Keeping our eyes fixed on Christ, we are called to see as he sees as we continue to run the race. So we are indeed surrounded by a great crowd of witnesses cheering us on. And there ahead of us is Christ leading us to the finish line. Let us this day toss the burden of sin that keeps us from seeing others as our brothers and sisters in this race. With Christ as our leader, may we lead others by our love, our mercy, our healing touch today and this week. May we help to unburden their burdens, that they may be able to run without heavy loads. And then may we continue together to run the late race to the homeland that is meant for all of us. May God grant each of us the grace this week to keep our eyes indeed fixed on Jesus, the leader and perfecter of faith, and to see as he sees the invisible ones.
Please like, subscribe, or comment below.